Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Durst. I've been hiring, firing, and mentoring executives, frontline employees, interns, and job seekers in companies around the world through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. I work with people in Hong Kong, India, Australia, and across the United States. What sets them apart? A lot, but there's more they have in common. And one of those commonalities is transition is a part of life. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions that are big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet, the people who can make the difference that matters to you right now. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big change. The insight track you're going to access during our future episodes is better than a crystal ball. It's the exact information you need to take that next step. Whether you're a new grad applying for your first professional job, someone looking to transition your work experience into a promotion, launching your own company, or maybe even starting to plan your retirement, you're in transition, and this series is for you. We all know transition can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have VIP access to the future you want. Are you tired of the uncertainty of being passed up? We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to the front of the line. So, if change is on your horizon, or maybe just the thought of change, you won't want to miss this discussion. It could be the exact edge you need to turn transition into an amazing opportunity. Dr. Catherine Wiberg, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode. I look back through your history, technical writer, business outreach coordinator, business instructor, and now motivational speaker and executive coach. What an incredible background. Please walk our listeners through that history and why you think that those all help you in terms of dealing with transition management with your clients.
Thank you, Bob. I am so excited to be here with your show. In truth, you look at my LinkedIn profile and you see that I have always been in some type of transition. In fact, I remember my first conscious transition was going to a high school where nobody knew me. And my purpose in going there was to create the person I wanted to be. And I began looking around and finding things in people that I loved and telling them about it. And then looking at how I could be more like that, or if I already had those strengths and attributes. I began working on that in high school, and through all of the different things that I have tried, the different careers where I have played with the technical editing and the instructing and coaching, and now profitable alignment, which allows me to do motivational speaking and coaching to women who are in transition, I discovered that helping people recognize their strengths and learn how to use them in new ways helps them to transition, whether they're trying to get a promotion, trying to change careers, trying to begin careers. It's all about falling back on your strengths. And that's something I've learned to help people find. And I love it because your strengths can get you through anything.
Really great. Thank you so much for that. And I want to come back to that finding strengths in just a moment. Catherine, let's say a friend just contacts you and tells you that they've lost their job recently because the company is going out of business because of all of this COVID crisis. What are the steps that they should take?
The first thing I like to do is recognize that they're hurting. Anytime a transition that you did not seek happens to you, there's going to be some grieving. There always will need to be a mourning for what you have lost. And then there's the opportunity to recognize what you have gained. I like helping people see the positives of their previous employment and looking at the things that they learned and the things about themselves that shone through everything that they did, helping them recognize that the job that they had is not their identity. What they brought to the job is their identity. And that can lead them to new opportunities. I know speakers who are now, instead of being on a stage, they are virtual online. That's fantastic, because during COVID-19, everything in the world seems to be going virtual. After COVID-19 is resolved, those people who have done this virtual speaking will then be able to go either to a stage or have a virtual presentation, and they have now strengthened what they already had in their presentation skills with a new avenue. People who have lost their jobs to COVID-19 have that same opportunity of saying, this is what I did well, what can I do with it next?
Catherine, you talk about recognizing your strengths and uncovering your strengths, which you feel truly helps a person through transition management. Can you explain that to us? What does that mean?
I admit this is my favorite part of coaching and speaking, helping people to know, own, and build on their strengths. I was working with a client several months ago who was a professor at a university. She had been there as an adjunct professor and now as a full-time professor, and wanted to apply for a dean position. She came to me because she had forgotten all that she honestly had to offer. She had begun to see the ways in which she went above and beyond in her classroom, and the ways that she went above and beyond in building teams and helping other professors to teach in a way that engaged the students more in their learning and helped the students navigate their own learning. She took all of that for granted, and she didn't realize that the passion that she had for her students' success was a gift that she then poured effort into making it a strength, so that she could then teach at conferences, which she had done, about this approach in teaching that engaged the students. And she could take that to this dean's position for which she applied and say, this is how I build teams. This is how I supervise. This is what it has done for my students. And it all came from who she was originally. We were able to find that by her telling me stories of successes, her telling me stories of her approach, her sharing with me her passions and what she loves about being a teacher and how that could transition. And that is how I like to help people find their strengths, get to their passions, find out why they like it, and help them see what that demonstrates about all of the other aspects of themselves. From there, they can build and build and build.
Really great coaching. Thank you so much for that. Catherine, can you give us some examples of self-assessment tools or other resources that someone that is in transition might be able to use?
There are some books that I enjoy, and also I have some items that I'm going to be putting up on my website. There are free additional resources. One of the books that I like is by Liz Ryan, and it is Reinvention Roadmap by Liz Ryan. She wrote this book roughly around 2014 to help people recognize how they can reinvent themselves, per se, for career shifts. I really like what she shares because she really helps people to delve into what they're looking at. I have, from what she has shared, taken some of my own questions to help people recognize what she calls dragon slaying stories.
I love that.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
I had people ask me, so what is a dragon slaying story? I used to say that it's whenever you go above and beyond and you have a situation that you succeed in exceptionally. I have since restructured how I approach that. A dragon slaying story is when you slay a dragon that somebody else cannot slay. For example, I am an extremely good editor. I have helped people to edit their resumes, their cover letters, their dissertations, their books. I am an extremely good editor. However, I don't have those stories that that person has. That person brings to me the stories. I then edit them to make that person sound the very best that that person can. That is me slaying their dragon of editing and them slaying somebody else's dragon by putting the story and the experience out there from which somebody else can learn and grow and improve.
That's an example, both of you coming with your best selves, and the combination of the two makes a better product in the end.
Exactly. I love strengths-based teams where you can recognize your strengths and somebody else's strengths, and how will that person's strengths help where I am weak, and how will my strengths help where somebody else is weak, so that it all becomes based around strengths. That is the best way to get a good product or a good experience, is build on your strengths and somebody else's.
So, Catherine, how do I deal with the stresses of being unemployed and looking for a job? I'm brave during the day. At night, those gremlins come out and tell me that I've been an imposter and I'm not as good as what I thought I was, and I'll probably never have a job. How do I deal with those?
I admit I have been known to fight those gremlins myself at night. The easiest way that I have found to deal with them is, first, think of your past successes. Your past successes can guide you to your future successes. Second, think of somebody who admires you and start to consider, why does that person admire you? Another thing to do is turn that on its ear. Think of somebody you admire and think about, why do I admire this person? And this is how I discovered the strengths that I have developed in myself. I began to look at people whom I admired and I said, wow, that person's amazing. I realized that one of the reasons that I loved that person and admired that person was actually because I shared those strengths. And I didn't recognize them at first. And I looked and I said, oh, this person is so good at listening. And this person is so good at understanding me. And that is something that I had consciously worked on. And I was able to say, wow, you know what? I do that too. And I was able to bring up my own examples and slay those gremlins with my dragon slaying stories. It makes it much easier. And then you find more that you can build on. Gremlins are just dragons waiting to be slain.
I really like that a lot. Catherine, could you explain what an elevator pitch is in the transition process, and how do you effectively craft one?
Elevator pitches are interesting because so many people have different perspectives on how to approach them. For me, an elevator pitch is a way to describe yourself as your best self and then follow it up with an example. I have been told that I am an intuitive, intelligent, inspiring, and encouraging leader. These are things that I try to live up to. My elevator pitch then could be, for example, I am intuitive, intelligent, inspiring, and encouraging. For example, people come to me when they need to see their best selves so that they can go out and conquer the world. That would lead somebody into saying, wait, how would you do that? And then you can answer more questions. So anybody else in transition, what have you done well? What have you loved? Identify yourself with it. Own those strengths. Then talk about how that helps somebody. It doesn't have to be long. It just has to get somebody interested enough to recognize you are genuine with what you said and you provide value.
Catherine, someone told me that I come across as playing the victim card while I'm in transition. I'm not sure I even know what that means. My thinking when I heard that was, don't they know that I'm hurting? How could they say that I'm playing a victim? What should the person do when they hear that?
I think there are a couple of things to learn from that statement. If someone said you're playing the victim, that person either is trying to help you recognize that you have more power than you realize and wants to help you step it up because that person knows you're more powerful than you're showing, or that person is equally insecure and sees something about himself or herself in the way you are behaving. It's really an opportunity, instead of accepting offense, an opportunity to look and say, what makes this person think I'm playing the victim? If I am believing that I cannot do, if I am believing that everything happens to me instead of me happening to the world, what can I do about it? If the other person is hurting also, it's an opportunity to increase your empathy and say, I understand that I hurt. I understand that you hurt. How can we help each other? It's also an opportunity just to walk away. But really, it always is an opportunity for self-reflection. You can either ask, why do you think I'm a victim? Or, what would make the person think so? How can I attack instead of being attacked by the world?
Yeah, we sometimes too easily give that power that we have inside of us away. And what you're suggesting is maybe just trying to ensure that you come with your best self, your most powerful self. How should I use LinkedIn or any other social media tools in my transition management?
LinkedIn and other social media are fantastic opportunities to reach out and either reinvent yourself or rebrand yourself to who you want to be and who you are. Now, it's not saying, for example, well, I want to be Angelina Jolie, and so I'm going to present myself as this phenomenal actress who also is philanthropic and so on and so forth, because I don't have that skill set. However, I want to be somebody who inspires and who encourages. Oh, and guess what? I have all of these ways in which I have inspired, in which I have encouraged. I have people who I have helped. I have organizations whom I have worked through. And it's the opportunity to go through and say, oh, wow, what inspires me? And maybe I'll put it out there to inspire somebody else. It also gives you the opportunity to extend your network. I am a natural extrovert unless it comes to sales or networking with the stigma of I'm trying to get something. If I am networking because I want to help somebody or because I think I have something of value, I return to being my extrovert self. If I want somebody to have opportunities that I can provide, it's much easier to be my extrovert self. If I feel like I am pushing myself on somebody, I get shy, I clam up, I trip over my tongue. Networking is an opportunity to reach out and provide value. And that's exactly what LinkedIn and social media gives us the opportunity to do. Even if it's posting quotes that inspire you. For example, I have on my wall, success isn't the absence of failure, but going from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm. I have that attributed to Abraham Lincoln. I can put that out on LinkedIn, and that might inspire somebody else, and we can start a conversation, and we can start a relationship that is going to help me through my transition.
I love that quote as well. So thank you for reminding me of that one. You talked about networking and being a potential introvert, as some of our listeners might be. How might they get better at networking? And what are some of the steps that you would suggest that they take?
There's another book that I really love, The Introvert's Edge by Matthew Pollard. He talks about how introverts are the best salespeople and the best networkers in the world because introverts think things through and introverts create value before they create conversation. I loved Matthew Pollard's book. I recommend it as highly as I recommend Liz Ryan's Reinvention Roadmap. It is recognizing that networking can be one-on-one, and introverts do best one-on-one. They get their energy one-on-one instead of walking into a group of 250 people and being exhausted because there are 250 people. Look for one person that you think you might be able to go talk to and create that one-on-one connection that an introvert seeks. Same thing with LinkedIn, which of course is our virtual networking room. Look for one person with whom you might be able to connect. Find something that you have in common and say, I noticed that you have an interest in snow skiing, and I once visited the Alps, for example, and that's some of the best snow skiing ever. Or I once went to Utah that claims the greatest snow on earth, and I went snow skiing, and start building a relationship. Introverts love one-on-one, and that's where they get their energy. That's where it starts.
Let's say that you have an opportunity to have a telephone interview.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips or techniques that you would suggest to our listeners to be more successful on the telephone interview?
My first thought is a smile matters on the phone as much as it matters in person. If you have to force yourself to smile until you can feel it, do it, because it makes a difference. With a phone interview, take notes just like you would if you were in an in-person interview. One of the amazing benefits of a telephone interview is that you can have your notes that you have developed from considering what questions might they ask, looking at what they have on their website about the company, and what you've been able to learn perhaps about the interviewers from LinkedIn. And you can have all of those notes with you, and the interviewer doesn't know. So you have your crib sheet. It's a lot more empowering to recognize the benefits that you have from a phone interview than the drawbacks. You may not have the face-to-face, but you still have the tone of voice and the opportunity to shine with which you may read your interviewer. You still have some of the nonverbal cues.
Someone once told me that if you put a mirror in front of you during the telephone interview and make certain that you watch yourself periodically smiling, that it changes the voice tone and inflection that you have. I always thought that was a good idea.
I agree. I definitely can hear if somebody is smiling or if someone is not smiling.
So let's take it to the next step of the process. Typically, you've made it through the telephone interview screening. Now you're going to be the in-person interview. How should you prepare for that? And what things should you make certain that you remember during that in-person interview?
Make certain you remember the names of the people who are interviewing you. I write them down so that I don't forget. It's also important to maintain eye contact and to recognize that maintaining eye contact does not mean staring somebody down. It means looking at somebody as you would a friend instead of looking down at your shoes or looking out the door. It means you're allowed to break eye contact every once in a while, but you want to be sure that you're engaging. Also, I think it's important to remember that it's okay to pause. You don't have to be talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And if you don't have an answer the very moment that a question is asked, acknowledge, that's a good question. Give me a moment to think. Or I have many examples I could give you. Just a moment, please, while I choose one. It's okay to pause. Also, recognize that the person interviewing you is probably nervous also, because that person is required to find the best person for the position. And that can be a lot of pressure. If you recognize that that person might be nervous, then you can help to try to calm that person, find some connection. Also, nervousness is not a bad thing. If you are nervous, it means it matters. It means you care. If you're going to a job interview and it's important enough for you to feel nervous, that's good. It's just an opportunity to remember, I want this, I can do this. It matters.
Catherine, do you think transition management is different if you're older, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, if you're a fill in the blank? Is there something different about that?
I think the only difference is what you believe is there. There are individuals that you will meet in every walk of life who will see you different from how they see me because of their own experience. That's fine. You and I are different people, and that's part of the joy of our association. The fact that I'm a woman and you're a man, and the person next to me is a first-generation immigrant to the United States makes no difference if the strengths that I have as part of who I am match what the company needs. If what I bring to the table fits their culture, fits their need, fits their skill set a little bit better than you, then they can take me. If you, however, have the skill set and the social cultural fit and the strengths that they are missing, and you're the better fit, then that's fine. One of my favorite things is to look at it and say, someone said no, where's my next opportunity for yes? What can I learn? And what strengths do I have to take to the next person?
What if you have something bad in your work past? Discipline, maybe even fired. How do you handle that with a potential employer?
Point out what you learned from it. If you were fired, what did you learn as a result? What have you changed? Did you need to change something? If you have some other problem, how have you grown? How will you prevent that from affecting negatively the work that you will do for them? How will you bring those lessons to affect positively the work you will do for them? I've worked with many people in transition who have extremely varied backgrounds. Some were coming from addiction, some were coming from incarceration, some were coming from previous health issues, and yet they all had lessons learned and strengths created as a result. And they can say, I was a different person then. I have built on that person, and this is who I am now. This is what I've learned. This is how I'm stronger because of it.
Catherine, do you think that transition management in a job setting has similarities in other transitions that people might be going through in their life? And if so, what are some of those similarities?
Absolutely. Transition is transition however you look at it. Every time something changes, something is lost and something is gained. Whether you lose a spouse to death or divorce or military deployment and it's temporary, or you lose a job due to company closure, location closure, global pandemic, decreasing sales, or you transition from being a full-time at-home parent to an empty nester who is jumping into the career field that you haven't been in for several years. There's always something that you are losing and something that you are gaining. There will always be something to mourn, and it's okay to mourn what is lost. It's okay to grieve for what is lost. It's just not okay to stay there. It's important to recognize, yes, this was a valuable experience or a valuable relationship and valuable employment or something of that nature, and then recognize that episode or segment of my life is gone. What can I take from it and move forward into my next? Now, this is not going to be an overnight thing. It's not going to be a one-time thing. It's something that with every transition, you will occasionally revisit what you've lost. The times that you revisit in sadness will begin to decrease. And as you revisit, you'll be able to revisit with joy and moving forward. It's always opportunity, and it is okay to grieve as long as you keep moving forward.
Dr. Catherine, if our listeners remember only 3 things from today's discussion as they go through transition, what are those 3 things you want them to take with them?
It is important to know that you are strong and to know how you are strong. It is important to own the strengths that you have and to lean into them. And as you own and know who you are and how strong you are, you can build on those strengths, on those gifts, on those talents, and achieve greater success than you've had before.
I'm sure that our listeners understand their own personal strength better after listening to you today. You gave them so much value in terms of the transition process. And Dr. Catherine Wiberg, thank you so much for your time and information. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. This was wonderful.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We're working in unprecedented times as the world responds to the recent COVID-19 crisis. The fact is that even those who are not in transition understand it could be right around the corner, next month or a year from now. The purpose of these episodes are to give listeners support and the critical tools to adjust with the winds, wherever they come. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully, perhaps gracefully or without too many battle scars, survived their own obstacle courses, and can share useful information on how to steady your ship or your world in this uncertainty. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on social media. If you have any questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate your time you're investing in sharing these important conversations with me, my guests, and others who are going through life transition. Transitions between jobs, life stages, new entrepreneurial ventures, or whatever life brings. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode of People in Transition.